In September 2022, a researcher named Daniel Swiftwind conducted a series of recorded interviews with Raymond Three Bears, a 74-year-old Lakota elder residing on the Standing Rock Reservation in North Dakota. The recordings were time-stamped, witnessed, and later submitted to the Oral History Archive at the University of New Mexico. Three Bears opened the first session without prompting. Do not go past the cottonwoods after the sun is gone. Not because we say so, because it knows the difference between day and night better than we do. He was not speaking metaphorically. Swiftwind confirmed this in his field notes. Three Bears had spent 34 years as a tribal land steward, responsible for boundary surveys, livestock corridors, and environmental incident documentation. He filed paperwork. He used GPS equipment. He attended county zoning hearings. He was not a man who spoke in symbols when plain language was available. The border he referenced runs 2.3 miles along the northeastern edge of the reservation. A tree line, primarily cottonwood and scrub pine, marks the transition between tribal land and federally administered wilderness. No structures exist past it, no roads, the nearest maintained trail ends 600 yards short of the tree line. Three Bears stated he had observed the entity twice, once in 1987, once in 2019. He described both sightings in identical terms, which Swiftwind noted as unusual. Witness memory typically degrades and reconstructs. Three Bears used the same 11 words both times. He refused to repeat them on recording. What he would confirm was this: it comes from the other side of the border. It does not cross before sundown, and it has never, in his lifetime, come before dark without reason. He paused after saying that. Then he said there had been reasons lately. That claim might have sounded like folklore if it had ended with him, but it did not. There was another witness on record. Not an elder, not a storyteller. A ranger.
Marcus Deloreia spent 11 years as a Bureau of Indian Affairs ranger assigned to the Standing Rock District, badge number 4471. His service record includes 2 commendations for search and rescue operations and 1 formal citation for environmental compliance enforcement. He retired from field duty in March 2022. He now works a desk position in Bismarck. He does not work nights. He agreed to a single recorded conversation in January 2023. He set one condition before it began: do not use the word creature. He said the word made the conversation feel fictional, and he wanted it understood that what he was describing was not fictional. Deloreia filed Incident Report IR 2019-114 on August 7, 2019. The report was logged, assigned a case number, and transferred to the regional BIA office in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Standard procedure. Within 6 weeks, it had been reclassified as a wildlife disturbance, Category 4, no follow-up required. Deloreia said he was not notified of the reclassification. He found out when he requested a copy for his own records 3 months later. One line in the original report had been redacted in the archived version. Deloreia remembered what it said. He had written it himself. He described the reclassification as administratively convenient. He did not elaborate on that phrase. He did not need to. His professional background matters for one specific reason. Deloreia completed Advanced Wildlife Tracking Certification through the North Dakota Game and Fish Department in 2014. He can identify animal sign, prints, scat, compression patterns, hair transfer, with a level of precision that most field officers do not have. He knows what bears look like in the dark. He knows what elk sound like moving through timber. What he encountered on the night of August 6, 2019, he could not classify. That, he said, was the part that ended his nights, and the reports that followed did not begin with a sighting.
They began with the land itself changing behavior. Between 2017 and 2020, 6 individuals filed separate environmental disturbance reports with the Standing Rock Tribal Environmental Office. They did not know each other. Their properties were distributed across a 4-mile stretch of the reservation's northeastern corridor. None of their reports used the same language. All of them described the same sequence. It begins with silence. Not gradual quiet, immediate cessation. Witnesses describe the insect noise, crickets, cicadas, the standard acoustic baseline of a summer night in North Dakota, cutting off as if a switch had been thrown. One witness, a retired schoolteacher named Gloria Eagleheart, said she had lived on that land for 51 years. She had never heard it go that quiet, not once, not during storms, not during the coldest nights of winter. The silence preceded every subsequent incident by an estimated 4 to 9 minutes. A rancher named Curtis Blackwater operates a cattle operation 1.1 miles from the tree line. Beginning in the spring of 2018, his herd began refusing a specific 3-acre pasture quadrant in the northeast corner of his property. Not gradually. On a single Tuesday in April, they stopped entering it entirely. Blackwater consulted a veterinarian, had the soil tested for toxic plants, checked the water source. Nothing returned abnormal. The cattle still refused that quadrant. He has stopped trying to move them into it. 2 of Blackwater's dogs began self-injuring when leashed outside after dusk. One required veterinary intervention. Both were relocated inside permanently. Blackwater does not discuss what he thinks caused the behavioral change. He answers that question by pointing toward the tree line and looking away. In the summer of 2019, a wildlife biologist contracted by the Tribal Environmental Office installed 12 motion-activated sensors along the northeastern perimeter. The sensors were calibrated to register heat signatures from animals above 30 pounds. Over a 6-week monitoring period, the sensors recorded 11 mass displacement events, instances where large numbers of animals moved rapidly away from the tree line simultaneously. None of the 11 events produced a corresponding heat signature. The biologist's final note in her report read, "Something moved through, nothing registered." She did not renew her contract. By then, the concern was no longer limited to sounds and animal behavior. Physical markers had started appearing at the border itself. In the fall of 2020, the tribal land steward position passed from Raymond Threebears to a younger appointee named Joseph Swallow. One of Threebears' final acts before stepping down was to walk the northeastern perimeter with Swallow and show him what to look for. Not what to do about it, only what to look for. Swallow began documenting what he found, methodically, with photographs, GPS coordinates, and written descriptions filed monthly with the Tribal Environmental Office. By spring of 2021, he had cataloged 11 anomalies along a 1.4-mile stretch of the border perimeter. The most consistent finding was stripped bark. Cottonwood and pine trees along the inner edge of the tree line showed lateral strippings at heights between 8 and 10 feet off the ground. The stripping pattern was bilateral, occurring on both sides of individual trunks, suggesting something had gripped the tree rather than rubbed against it. A forestry consultant who reviewed Swallow's photographs noted that the reach implied, fingertip to fingertip across the diameter of a mature cottonwood, was not consistent with any known North American animal. Swallow submitted cast impressions from a creek bed running parallel to the tree line to the zoology department at North Dakota State University in March 2021. The impressions were bipedal, 5-digit. The stride length between impressions measured 6.8 feet. The depth of compression suggested a weight load that the receiving professor estimated, conservatively, at over 800 pounds. The university's response arrived 6 weeks later. 2 words covered the classification field on their assessment form: unclassified, unmatched. The professor did not respond to Swallow's follow-up email. At the northeastern corner of the perimeter, a steel fence post, 4 inches in diameter, driven 18 inches into hard-packed soil, had been bent. The deformation was at the base, not the top. Whatever force was applied came from above and outside, pressing inward and downward. An engineering student, at Swallow's request, calculated the lateral force required to produce that specific bend geometry at that specific point on the post. He said it was not a number he expected to see outside of a laboratory setting. The final anomaly required no analysis. A game camera mounted to a cottonwood at the perimeter's midpoint was found intact, undamaged, properly powered. Its memory card had been factory reset, all footage erased. No fingerprints on the housing, no evidence of tampering with the mounting strap. The camera had been installed 4 days earlier. That was when Threebears stopped speaking in general terms and started laying out rules. He did not call them warnings. He called them protocols. The distinction mattered to him. Warnings, he said, assume you still have a choice. Protocols assume you have already decided to survive. There are 4 of them. No open fire within 400 yards of the tree line after sundown. No names spoken aloud in the open after dark. Not your own, not anyone present with you. No reflective surfaces left facing outward overnight. Windows covered, mirrors turned, truck mirrors folded in. And the 4th, no one travels past the cottonwoods alone, at any hour, for any reason. These protocols are not recent. Threebears stated they predate his grandfather's generation. They were not written down until Swiftwind's interviews in 2022. They had survived entirely through direct transmission, elder to apprentice, parent to child, for as long as anyone in the community could establish. Three Bears said the fact that they had survived that long, unchanged, was itself a form of evidence. The logic embedded in each protocol is specific enough to suggest observed behavior rather than generalized fear. The fire restriction implies the entity is drawn to light sources. The name prohibition implies it responds to sound in a targeted way. The mirror protocol is the one Swiftwind pressed Three Bears on most directly. Three Bears answered without hesitation. He said it had been seen to stop at reflective surfaces, to look. He said the looking took time. He said that time was useful. Then he said he would not discuss the mirror protocol further. 3 documented cases exist where the protocols were broken. The first occurred in the summer of 2009. A group of 4 teenagers from the reservation camped 200 yards from the tree line. They built a fire. They stayed past midnight. One of them did not come home that night. He was found the following morning, 1.3 miles from the campsite, uninjured, with no memory of leaving the group. He has not spoken publicly about that night. He moved off the reservation in 2011. The second and third cases both occurred in 2021. That year, something changed. August 2021 was the driest month on record for that stretch of North Dakota. The creek running parallel to the northeastern perimeter dropped to 4 inches of standing water. The motion sensors registered no wildlife activity for 11 consecutive days before the first incident. Not reduced activity, 0. The silence had expanded. The first night was August 17th. A tribal youth worker named Sandra Reaches Far was conducting a late welfare check on an elderly resident whose property sits 340 yards from the tree line. She finished at 9:47 p.m.
Walking back to her vehicle, she stopped. She later described the sensation as wrongness before sound, an instinctive halt she could not consciously explain. Then the sound arrived. Movement in the tree line, bilateral. 2 sets of footfalls, but synchronized with a precision that excluded the possibility of 2 separate animals. She described it as one thing moving in a way that produced 2 sounds. She did not have language for what she meant by that. She said she knew it was one thing. She reached her vehicle. She did not look back. She filed a written account with the tribal office the following morning. The second night was August 19th. A pickup truck belonging to a tribal council member was parked at the northern boundary marker overnight, standard practice during seasonal fence inspections. When the driver returned at first light, he found impressions on the roof of the cab, 4 of them, arranged in a pattern consistent with something having placed weight on the roof from above and outside the vehicle. The impressions were not dense, they were compressions in the metal, as if pressure had been applied slowly, deliberately, and then released. The truck roof sits 5.9 feet off the ground. No tree branches overhang that section of the boundary road. The nearest structure is 400 yards south. The driver had the impressions photographed before touching the vehicle. He then drove it directly to a body shop in Mobridge and had the roof panel replaced the same day. He said he did not want it in his driveway. The third night was August 21st. At approximately 2:40 a.m., a structure fire ignited in the tree line 300 yards past the northeastern perimeter. A seasonal equipment shelter, used during summer boundary surveys, burned to the foundation in under 20 minutes. Volunteer fire crews responded from the nearest station, 14 miles away. They arrived to find the structure fully involved. Suppression took 40 minutes.
The fire investigators' report was filed September 3, 2021. No accelerant was identified. No ignition point was established. Electrical source was ruled out. The structure had no power connection. Lightning was ruled out. There was no storm activity within 60 miles on that date. The cause of origin field in the final report contains 4 typed words. Undetermined. Investigation now closed. 2 days later, the replacement camera went up. It was installed on August 22, 2021 at 4:16 p.m. by Joseph Swallow and wildlife biologist Aaron Madsen. They mounted it 7.4 feet high on the same cottonwood where the earlier unit had been erased. This one carried dual storage, an external battery, and a tamper seal. At 2:17:12 a.m., it triggered. The usable footage lasts 4.3 seconds. Swallow reviewed it first. Madsen reviewed it next. Deloreia reviewed it after that. Later, 2 outside specialists submitted written assessments. None disputed the central point. Whatever entered frame was upright. The height estimate came from field calibration. 3 survey ribbons had been tied to nearby trunks at 6 feet, 8 feet, and 10 feet. When the image stabilizes, the top of the subject passes just under the highest ribbon. Madsen's measurement placed it at 9.2 feet. There is no visible tail. The shoulders appear narrow relative to the torso. The arms hang lower than expected for a human frame. During one step, the knees angle inward, then correct. A forensic gait analyst in Minneapolis described the movement as load-bearing bilateral locomotion, inconsistent with normal human mechanics. The subject does not charge. It enters from the left at a measured pace. It covers 8 visible feet in less than 1 second. Then it stops. The head turns directly toward the lens. At 2:17:16 a.m., the frame holds for less than half a second. Then the recording ends. The file is intact. The storage card preserves every earlier frame. Only the timestamp stops.
The gate analyst watched the clip repeatedly before signing his statement. His final line was short. "That is not a gate I can classify." By sunrise, Deloreia was already back on the perimeter road, because footage like that required an answer on the ground before anyone else got there. Weeks later, that decision would put him in the only pursuit he ever described on record. Marcus Deloreia returned to the perimeter on October 4, 2021, because a welfare check had been requested for a seasonal worker who had missed 2 scheduled radio calls. The worker's trailer sat 600 yards beyond the cottonwoods. Outside the zone, Three Bears had always told him not to enter alone. Deloreia went anyway. He left the paved road at 8:42 p.m. and reached the trailer 11 minutes later. The trailer was empty, engine cold, lantern off, 1 folding chair overturned in the dirt. Deloreia radioed dispatch, got partial static, then started back on foot towards his vehicle. Halfway to the boundary track, the air changed. He would later describe it as pressure in the ears first, then silence, then a smell like wet metal. The first sound came from behind him and to his left, a footfall, then another to his right, same pace, same spacing. He stopped walking. The sound stopped with him. He resumed. They resumed. Not circling, closing. Deloreia unhooked his flashlight but did not turn it on. He said light felt like an invitation. He increased pace. So did it. Brush moved at shoulder height inside the tree line, keeping level with him. He broke into a run. His radio slipped from his vest and hit the dirt. He left it there. The final 50 yards were downhill. He reached the truck, pulled the door open, and started the engine before the latch had fully caught. As he accelerated, something struck the truck bed once. Not a scrape, not a slide. A single impact hard enough to jolt the rear axle sideways. He did not brake. He did not look towards the tree line. He drove 14 miles south to the substation without stopping. The dash cam recorded 38 minutes of audio. Only 4 minutes of video survived. In the missing interval, dispatch logged 1 transmission from Deloreia. It contained only breathing, and 1 sentence repeated twice that night. The next morning made the report worse, not better. By 7:10 a.m. on October 5, 2021, 3 responders were at the boundary road with Deloreia: Joseph Swallow, volunteer medic Lena White Elk, and Sergeant Paul Henders of the Sioux County Sheriff's Office. Sunrise had cleared the tree line, but no one went past the cottonwoods immediately. Deloreia remained beside his truck and pointed to the ground first. The vehicle had been parked there less than 3 minutes the night before. In the packed dirt beside the driver's door, investigators found a single circular depression measuring 9 inches across and 14 inches deep. Swallow photographed it with a survey scale. Henders tested the surrounding surface with a steel probe. The soil profile was consistent to 8 inches, then compacted harder below. No tire slippage, jack pressure, or hoof strike could account for the depth. White Elk reported the smell before anyone mentioned it. Sulfuric, but organic. Not fuel, not decay. She stepped back, covered her mouth, and vomited in the roadside grass. Henders later used the same description in his supplemental note, adding that the odor weakened sharply after 8 a.m. No prints led to or from the depression. No drag marks, no hair, no blood. 1 cottonwood 30 yards north showed fresh bark removal at shoulder height, wet at the edges as if stripped hours earlier. The site was measured, flagged, and photographed from 4 angles. Copies were uploaded that afternoon to the county server under Henders's case file. 72 hours later, every image was gone. No request for transfer appeared in the case history, and no supervisor signed any order authorizing removal either. Not left only the elder's final statement, which did not resolve anything. It made the pattern harder to dismiss.
The final interview with Raymond Three Bears was recorded on September 14, 2022, in a maintenance office behind the tribal storage yard, 1.8 miles from the northeastern border. Daniel Swiftwind asked him one last direct question. Was the thing beyond the cottonwoods trapped there, or was it choosing not to cross? Three Bears answered immediately. It is not trapped. He said the border mattered only to people. Fence posts, survey lines, county maps, trust land boundaries, those were human systems. What moved through those trees recognized something older. Not ownership, permission. Swiftwind asked whether that permission could end. Three Bears looked toward the window before answering. The glass had been covered with a canvas sheet before the interview began. He had requested that himself. Twice in my life, he said, it has widened where it walks. He said the first expansion came after the winter of 1987. The second came in 2021. Then he gave the only conclusion he was willing to place on record. The line is not there to stop it. The line is there because, until now, it has chosen to stop. He waited. Then he added 2 words. For now. And nobody in the room asked him to explain.